Great. So welcome everyone to the second of the Youth Ecopreneur Learning Series for the top 40 shortlisted young entrepreneurs of the Youth Ecopreneur Awards. We're really excited to be hosting this second learning session on export strategy in the post-COVID area with our in-house expert from ITC, Valerio Stoyan, who is from the Sector and Enterprise Competitiveness team. And we're super thrilled to have him here. He's an expert, so lots of exciting learnings coming today. For those not familiar with me, my name is Claire Sterngold, and I work within the Youth and Trade team at the International Trade Center, part of the team that managed and rolled out the Youth Ecopreneur Awards. And I'm here with my colleagues, Tarika and Angela, as well as Julia, who are also part of the Youth Ecopreneur Awards team, supporting this session being rolled out here today. So once again, congratulations to all of you guys for making it to the top 40. It was a real pleasure working with you all. And yeah, Valerio, if you could go ahead and head to the next slide. Perfect. So for those who aren't familiar with the International Trade Center, I just want to give you guys some brief background. The International Trade Center is the joint agency of the United Nations and the WTO, and our mandate is to support small and medium enterprises in developing countries to become more competitive and to access international markets. We work with partners along various value chains, and we work with both business support organizations and policymakers. So that's why we're here today supporting you guys to really help you in getting more competitive and of course to understand what exporting looks like in this crazy pandemic world that we're in. So a bit about the two teams that work to roll out the Youth Ecopreneur Awards. We have the Green to Compete team, which is ITC's activator for the transition to a green economy, working to nurture both people and the planet. And Green to Compete provides knowledge, expertise, and a network for MSMEs in developing countries so that they can develop a competitive advantage by going green. The Youth and Trade program that I am part of supports youth economic empowerment through two tracks: youth skills development for employment and youth entrepreneurship. And we also work directly to support various types of BSOs like incubators and accelerators to enhance their portfolio of services to better support youth. I work on overseeing the YAY community, which is our global platform connecting youth entrepreneurs to one another and various mentors, networks, resources, activities, and the like. You can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So this is some background on the Youth Ecopreneur Awards. I won't go too much into it because you guys were there, so you experienced it firsthand. But this past year, 2021, we launched the very first Youth Ecopreneur Awards, which we're looking to do annually. And the Ecopreneur Awards are a green business competition which specifically target young entrepreneurs from least developing countries and developing economies that have solutions to environmental challenges. These awards are really set to provide a stage and a sounding board for youth entrepreneurs to showcase their sustainable and scalable solutions and to further accelerate the green economic transition. And we offer support along this journey. The 2021 awards recognized entrepreneurs in three categories: water, energy, and waste. And as part of the prizes, we provided access to coaching, matchmaking with investors, networking, and opportunities to get involved in both the Green to Compete and the YAY Community Network. And that's why we're here today. This is one of those prizes that was offered, and we're really working to tailor this learning series to your needs and to bring you into contact with seasoned entrepreneurs and tech and digital geeks, as well as legal and financial experts, to really ensure that you feel empowered to take your green businesses forward. And just at the bottom of this slide, you can check out a number of the partners that supported us through the Youth Ecopreneur Awards. If you want to go to the next slide. I think this might be it for the intros. Cool, so that's the end of my introduction. And with that, I'll hand things over to Valerio, our expert for today. And thanks everyone. Please, as far as logistics go, please keep your mics muted. And if you have a question, you can raise your hand throughout the session and we can spotlight that for Valerio, or feel free to post your questions in the chat as we go along. Great, thanks everyone.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you for the introduction. Hello, everybody. My name is Valerio Stoyan. I've been working with ITC for 12 years now, and I'm an expert on export strategy, among many others. Okay. Mostly in my work, what I do is not only give trainings on export strategy, but I also give coaching and help companies, right, develop this strategy. And I think given so far in the beginning, given that we have only 4 participants, I feel like this is more as a coaching session, right? So I hope Abraham, Judith, Molebatsi, and Murimoga, you will enjoy this session today. Hopefully more of your colleagues will join us, okay? So first, let me, from Murimoga, you are from Zimbabwe. Glad to meet you. I've been many times in Zimbabwe, wonderful place, okay? So before we begin, why did we select this topic for you as one of the prizes for participating in the awards, okay? I think it's important. I understand that many of you are at the beginning, right? You are at the beginning of your journey with your company, okay? And the reason why we're doing this, I don't know all the participants that were at the awards, so I don't know exactly the type of businesses that you have, meaning mostly if you at the beginning, you are targeting only the local market, or you're targeting both, depending on what product or service you're offering, you're targeting both local and export markets, right? However, this is very important because no matter which market you are targeting, the current COVID situation is impacting you in a direct way, okay? And will be impacting your business for the foreseeable future, okay? So that's why we decided to take this topic for today. I will be presenting first, actually, let me go to the agenda a little bit. I will be presenting first a little bit about the strategy design, right? Just so we remember, okay, and so that we see a little bit of the elements that goes into an export strategy, in case you are not familiar with it, okay? And the reason why we're doing this is because you will see in the second session of today, everything, the way COVID impacted business is exactly, you know, everything that is contained in an export strategy, yeah? As Claire mentioned, please feel free to ask any questions during the presentation, and we'll also have a Q&A session at the end, yeah? I will try to make a 5-minute break in between this session, okay? But we'll see how the presentation goes along the way. Okay, so the first thing is strategy. Now, unfortunately, a lot of people have the tendency to confuse strategy with tactics, okay? It happened to me in the past before I knew this topic, okay, in more detail, and it's very easy to do. It's extremely abused in literature, okay? And strategy is used interposed with tactics, but we need to be very careful about the distinction. The strategy, my microphone makes some noise. Okay, let me try to do that. I hope it's better now. I will try also to move less, okay, so that there's no noise. Right, so in the word strategy first comes from the military, okay? That's where everybody got it. The word strategy was first used in the military, okay? And in the military, if you want a definition that comes from that area, is the art and science of developing and using political, economic, psychological, military forces to afford the maximum support and to increase the probabilities and favorable consequences of victory, okay? And lessen the chances of defeat. So why I wanted to mention that to you is that definition is because strategy involves science. Strategy, when we say strategy, we talk about victory and defeat, okay? It has a purpose, and probably one of the most important to you as manager, it requires planning of resources, yeah? These are very important things because these are the elements that will constitute an export strategy even for us in business. I've put here on the slide a few explanations for it. I'm not going to go very much into detail on them. By the way, at the end of today, you will receive this presentation, okay? So you will be able to go through it in detail if you see me not stopping on some elements. And I won't stop on all the elements because I've put here a lot of information for you, okay? But we don't have the necessary time to go into details on all of them. Just so. Okay, now it all starts with management being a very complex job for us, right? And I'm sure that even now at the beginning of the road, you've already discovered this. Management in itself, not only entrepreneurs, because once after you are the entrepreneur, you are the manager of the business, right? You're managing the business, and management is very, very complex. And the purpose of the strategy, right, is to build the bargaining power to beat your competition. Yeah, this is the main purpose. What you have here is an example. Imagine yourself, this is you, the manager, and this is your enterprise, right? With this, you can win a race, but what you can win an F1 race. But what if the race is this one? Okay, do you think this car, this business is suitable for this? No, it's not, right? You will need to change it. You will need to adapt your business. And this is the whole purpose of the exercise, to find the race you can win with your enterprise, okay? You have already done that in part with your businesses so far, okay? How have you done that? By designing your canvases, okay? By identifying in the beginning your customers, okay? Some of you might have some innovative products or services that haven't been put on the market before. And some of you might have designed an innovative business model for an already existing service or product, right? Now, when you were doing this, when you were working on your canvas, okay, when you were identifying your persona, okay, that's what you were doing. You were trying to find this race I'm talking about, okay? You are identifying the race and trying to model every time you pivoted, okay? You're trying to model your business, right, to fit that race that you found, okay? Now, all is good so far, but the same rules apply when you want to export, okay? You've been doing that from a business point of view regarding what your business is, right, so far. But the same logic will apply if and when you will want to export, okay? Good. Now, in terms of the business deals mainly, as I said, I'll review quickly these elements of the business strategy. Why am I doing this? Because the way, again, COVID impacted all of these elements, and you will see how it can affect your business, yeah? Now, the business deals with 5 types of resources, okay? All these 5: human, HR, financial, physical assets, information and know-how, okay, and networks and alliances, right? Now, we need to keep in mind that all of these 5 resources are interdependent and therefore overlap. Like, for example, one of your new team members, okay, a newly hired employee of yours, usually will bring information and know-how, okay? So this is an example of how 2 of the resources interlap to have a clearer idea, okay? I'm not gonna go into detail on these ones, right? But what it means, basically, all these resources are employed to build production, okay? And marketing capabilities, yeah? In order to achieve the exchange and obtain your expected returns, right? Which means that your job as a manager, okay, is to plan execute, and control these resources, okay? Now, when we're talking about management, we mean a set of the activities that are directed at you determining the quantity, quality, time, and cost, keep in mind these 4 variables, of resources, okay, that you need. And meaning planning their acquisition, planning their allocation, monitoring them, okay, and so on. Even if you are talking about services, it is the same thing, okay? You won't have physical products, but in terms of planning for it, it will be the exact same process, yeah? Okay. Like I said, I'm not teaching anything new to you today, all right? We're just reviewing them. So businesses engage in an exchange process, right? That's what you're doing. That's what you design in your entrepreneurship classes, right? What to exchange for resources. But in order to exchange something, that means that there needs to be another party willing to exchange for what you're offering, okay? Which means that the business has 2 components. The business has 2 components, which is the production, okay, in your or offering the service, right? And the marketing side, selling it to the people that are interested in exchanging that, okay? I think I can skip over these. These are what I just mentioned, the 2 functions of a business, okay? Production and marketing. Now, when you're designing your export strategy, you need to think about 2 main elements, which are segmentation and positioning. You have already done that when you were thinking about your business, okay? When you were designing your business, you've already done this, right? Again, it's the same applies when you're thinking about an export strategy, yeah? Now, segmentation. No matter what the segmentation variables and what technology you will use and target segment selected, the target segment selected must have some, how should I say, some critical criteria for a business to be able to use it, okay? When we're talking about the segment, right? It has to be, just to give you some example, it has to be of optimum size. You must be able to quantify the size. It must be measurable, okay? Many other things. Well, here is an example about how to use variables for your segmentation in the B2B markets and the B2C market, okay? In case you need to conduct this exercise again, when you'll be going to an export market, these are some of the elements that you can look at to use for your export strategy. And just to give you an example of it, I think, let me see if I just quickly skip. No, it's okay. The example will come a little later, okay? So what needs-based segmentation, when we're talking about needs, all that we need to know, a need is something that is necessary, but lacking, okay? Now, they're very different from wants, right? A need is something that a person must have, okay? In order either to survive or to accomplish part of their responsibilities, whatever it is, right? A want is a little different, okay? Because a want will not cause such harm to the person if they don't get the service and product, okay? So this is one of the first variables for your segmentation, yeah? Needs-based. Then, right. similar needs, expected outcomes, okay, and purchasing habits and occasions, right? We call them NIHO in the export strategy that we are designing normally, okay? These are 3 segmentation variables that you should be using when attempting to group customers, okay? And the reason I'm mentioning these is because during the pandemic, and you will see in the second part of this session today, okay, all of these have changed. They're no longer the same as they used to be. Expected outcomes, okay? When we're talking about expected outcomes, and I think I'll just go straight to the example, okay? Here is a classic segmentation by desired outcomes, okay? Here is a classic segmentation by desired outcomes, right? That takes into the account the client's habits, okay? For example, toothpaste. When we're thinking that a person that's socially active, what do they usually want, okay? White teeth and fresh breath, right? You're interacting with a lot of people. Therefore, you have the first solution, whitening toothpaste, right? For smokers, completely different type of audience. They want to fight yellowing their teeth because of the smoke, right? Therefore, you have toothpaste for smokers, okay? And so on, right? I think you understand the point that I'm trying to make here. How, depending on what the client's outcome wants to be, that's how you segment in the market. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Now, purchasing habits and occasions. This refers to those situations that might influence a purchase or a choice in consuming, okay? Now, these factors are very broad, okay? They could be either it's a weekday, for example, going to the cinema, okay? At the end of the week, or if, what else? Christmas holidays, right? That's another situation where the purchasing of some products are very occasional, right? So you have to take into consideration how consumers buy, okay? What is the habit? Where do they buy from when they do that, okay? Which are the occasions that they buy at? With the toothpaste example, we know that that's very periodical throughout the year, depending on how much the person uses the toothpaste, right? I'm sure there are statistics about this. The purchase is very, very well defined, the habit of such a product, okay? Now, positioning. Positioning, sorry, before we go to that. Positioned is mainly inherent to the production and distribution capabilities of the business and characteristics of the offer, okay? Because it refers to the creation of a product or service, yeah? In that sense, the positioning is the deliberate configuration, if you want, of an offer, okay, to satisfy the consumer's unmet needs, okay, expected outcomes and purchasing habits on occasions, the NIHOs that I mentioned, yeah? And the way you achieve this positioning is for you to manipulate the different dimensions of the product or of the service that you're offering, yeah? Again, very important for you at the beginning of the road, because so far you've been identifying these needs, right, of the personas that you have for your businesses in a specific way, in a more general way, if you want, or in the local market. However, all of these can change when you're talking about an export market, okay? All of these elements can change. So that's why when you're talking about an export market, you need to re-identify, rethink if your positioning, the way you're positioning your product or service can stay the same as it was until now. And this should be very easy for you to do, because I think, and I'm hoping that many of you have pivoted many times when you were designing your business. Okay. Now, with the positioning, the aim is to achieve your marketing objectives, which are these ones right here, okay? The marketing objectives for any business should be to sell more and more frequently to current buyers, to induce buyers and competitors to switch brands, okay? Convert people that are not using your service or your product into people that do use it, right? And of course, to secure your profitability, yeah? Now, to be able to achieve these marketing objectives, the offer needs to meet the expected outcomes, the NIHOs that we've been talking about, and the purchasing habits and occasions better than your competitors. Very, very important, okay? Not only to meet them, but to meet them better than your competitors, okay? Now, to be able to achieve this, you should start addressing all of these three elements. First, the NIHOs, right? Then the attributes that are required for the product, for your product, okay? And then the product dimensions, meaning the quality, quantity, time, and cost, okay? Now, this positioning, the way you're constructing your positioning, will impact your production and in turn, your marketing capabilities. Yeah. When I say production, I mean interchangeably with constructing your service, okay? With how the service is offered, right? You can take that also as when I'm referring to that. And I think so far we are okay on time, and I will continue for a half hour before we go on a break, right? So now that we reviewed these elements briefly, let's start looking into how COVID impacted businesses around the world and how you can safeguard yourselves against these effects. Why? Because these effects are here to stay. We don't know for how long, but they will be here to stay for a little bit, right? So the first thing that we can see is obviously what we all saw so far is that it had a very huge impact on demand and supply, okay, in international trade, right? On macroeconomic level, the pandemic produced very large shifts in trade volumes and values, yeah? And how so? Services trades, especially the travel services, was hit the hardest out of everything, okay? I think the travel services declined during this pandemic by about 70% of what they used to be, right? And then also the products, what I was mentioning before, the products structure and merchandise that's being traded has changed drastically, right? You have several products that went down, like fuels, aircrafts, okay, cars, and so on, while trade in other products, okay, like pharmaceuticals, protective equipment, things that are used at home mostly, right? They skyrocketed, yeah? So this is very, very important in terms of how we look in the future. Right, very important. The supply chains came under pressure in early 2020 and unfortunately stayed like that so far. And we don't know how long they're gonna keep doing that. Why? And it's happening even now because of the Omicron variant. People are being sent home again, right? So we see a lot of upstream products that are needed for production, right, that were no longer available. Why? Because whole factories closed, and we also, the hardest one was in the beginning of 2020, okay, when many enterprises closed, but these are still being they are still happening at the moment, okay? And unfortunately, we don't know which ones will continue and which ones will stop for now. Right, what I wanted to show you here is basically an assessment of the current situation on the current situation of the strategy design process, okay? Now, in terms of per capita income growth, what I wanted to show you here is the difference between developed countries, okay, and least developed countries and developing countries, how hard it affected their per capita income growth, right? Now, the pandemic will eventually come to an end, okay? But the question is, how will the recovery look like? There are several, at the moment, there are several recovery models, okay, that are based on previous shocks that have been recorded in history, yeah? These are the main four that the experts at the moment think can happen, right? And if we look a little bit into them, okay, first we have the L shape, right? First we have the L shape, where we have a big decline in the economy, which is followed by a very, very slow recovery period, okay? This is one of the scenarios that can happen. The U shape, okay? The U shape, in this scenario, the economy stagnates for a few quarters, okay? And up to 2 years, which we're still in it. Given that the pandemic started in the first quarter of 2020, we still have not passed this, scenario yet, okay? The W shape, these two, the last two, the W shape and the V shape, are optimistic scenarios, okay? Where you have here in the W shape a small decline, a small comeback, and then another small decline in the economy, and then it goes back to where it was, right? And the V shape is just a small one, a small dip in the economy, and then goes straight to where it was, okay? There's another scenario, the Z shape, which is the most optimistic, and experts do not think this could be possible in today's current situation. Now, what I wanted to show you on this slide is just that I don't know where your businesses are or where you intend to export, but it is of importance from the point of view that Japan and the Gulf region business owners are the most pessimistic, okay? They think that these two scenarios in those two regions are the most probable. I think there is a consensus among all that the U shape is the one that will happen, right? I think this one gets the most votes, but of course, these are just guesses at this time, right? Now, given what we covered so far, okay, it's obvious that businesses need to revise their assumptions and the facts that you build your strategy on, or the facts on which you build your businesses on. I don't know where you started, or each of you, when you started designing your business and becoming an entrepreneur, but if it happened to be a year ago or a year and a half ago, realities might have changed, okay, in the world. And the way to revalidate your strategies, your businesses, comes in two ways: external, okay, and internal, right? I'm not going to go into all of this because I think it's more important to see COVID influence at the moment. So let's take a look at how the markets, the consumer needs, the expected outcomes, the consumer habits, all of these change due to COVID-19, and what is the impact of these changes on what can be the impact of these changes on your businesses, right? And your business capabilities. Okay, so let's go into each of them one by one. And we start with the needs, expected outcomes, habits, and occasions, right? Obviously, the most important, the most impact on a customer behavior is the increased migration to e-commerce, okay, and online activities. Yeah. Of course, there were people shopping online before, but in 2020, the share of e-commerce grew at 2 to 5 times the rate before the growth rate before COVID-19, which is very, very big. 2 to 5 times the rate to happen in 1 year and a half is extremely big. Yeah. Now, with this growth, with this growth of e-commerce use, most consumers now also expect immediate fulfillment, right? Meaning nowadays, over 90% of the people ordering online things see 2 to 3 days as the best baseline, okay? And even that is stretching it. They think it's too much. So no matter what product you're trying to deliver or you're creating with your business, right? Keep this in mind. It didn't used to be like that before the pandemic. People were used to waiting about a week, right, for their products to be delivered. Now the norm is 2 to 3 days. After 2 to 3 days, people become unsatisfied with the service. Yeah, 30% of the people expect same-day delivery, which is mind-boggling if you think about it. And unfortunately, I am among the 90% that expect 2 to 3. Since the pandemic, everything I have ordered personally has been delivered within 1 to 2 days. So just a food for thought for your businesses, okay? Now, convenience and costs are higher priorities, right? Brand loyalty. So when we're talking about brands, brand loyalty has been severely impacted by the COVID situation. Why? Because most people care more about convenience now than brand loyalty. And it's normal, since we're not going out anymore, brands all of a sudden don't matter that much, if you think about it, yeah? During the pandemic, as a statistic, 75% of people tried buying different brands and different type of products. 75%, this is very, very big, okay? Value and cheaper prices and promotions were the most next important things to consider for a client, yeah? Which obviously is normal. When you're at home with the risk of not knowing if you'll have a job or not, price becomes a factor over everything in your purchase decision, okay? Even if people are getting vaccinated at the moment, okay? The attention for better hygiene will still remain, okay? It's not going away. So why am I saying this? Why is this important? For your business model, it's important, okay? Meaning contactless payments, self-checkout, okay? Delivery, and not going to a store, okay? All of these things can impact depending on what your business is. Yeah? I'm not going to go because there are a lot, and I think all of them are fairly self-explanatory, okay? I think you can go through them all one by one, and In case you have any questions about them, you let me know, okay? Now, behavior and habit changes are also directly linked to the extent of exposures to new environments, yeah? On average, just as a fun fact, on average, it takes about 66 days for people to adopt a new habit, okay? We're talking about life habits now. So on average, it can vary from 10 days to 200 days, but the average is 66 days, yeah, depending on what the habit is. Also, people adopt habits more quickly that don't significantly change existing routines, right? The consumer nowadays is setting into new patterns of behavior for considerable length of times. If you think about COVID, right? Staying at home, working from home, okay? And this is very fertile ground for you to adapt to these new changes in behavior. And you see, that's what I meant. And that's why I was explaining before the habits, okay, and the behaviors and why it is important. Again, I'm coming back to the point that if you designed your business a year and a half ago or 2 years, depending on what your product or service is, you need to revisit it to see if it is still valid in today's world, based on how people behave nowadays. Yeah. Here are just as an information, 5 consumer themes, okay, trends, themes, if you want, that I took from the inspiration from McKinsey, right? And you have spending is growing by 6% versus pre-COVID trajectory, okay? 60 to 70% of adults are omnichannel, meaning that they use both stores, physical stores, and e-commerce, okay? Nobody's gonna drop the stores for good, but the predominance now goes to e-commerce shopping, okay? Acceleration continues in many categories, travel and out-of-home consumption, okay, which has been declined by both the Delta last year and now the Omicron variant, okay. 50% of consumers buy out-of-home products, okay, and investment in properties continues, right? And less than 75% of consumers continue to switch brands. Sorry, not less, approximately. And approximately 90% among millennials and high-income consumers, right? This is what I mentioned before, that brand loyalty is starting to fade away in today's world. Optimism about countries' recovery after COVID-19 changes from country to country, okay? These are some trends on how countries think that the recovery will go based on on a few countries here, right? And again, if you're planning or if you operate in one of those countries, it's important for you to know why, because if the optimism is very low, like in Japan, right, or Italy or Spain, if the optimism is very low, then that means consumers will continue to save money and have less of an expenditure. Yeah. Now, global consumers anticipate pulling back on spending on spending, okay? Expected spendings on different categories that you have here, okay, of products. In the first column here, you have different categories on product. They differ from country to country, okay? As you can see, China and India are the most optimistic ones that spending will continue to grow. But outside of those two countries, things look pretty pessimistic. Yeah. I'll just leave this slide here a little bit for you, but you will have it anyway. You will have this, this presentation. Right. Consumers also have responded to the crisis and its associated disruption to normal consumers' behavior by trying different shopping behaviors. Okay. Japan and Germany are the only ones that are still resistant to that. Okay, but all over the globe, consumers are changing their shopping behaviors. And the last thing in regards to country comparison, right, is the flight to digital. All these countries here are expecting that, that more and more things will be digital from now on. The only one that's the least here in this graph is China. And why is that? Because before the pandemic, China had a very, very good e-commerce penetration rate in the country. Okay, so they're not expecting it to grow by much more because it doesn't have room to grow by much more. Okay. And positioning. I think if it's okay, perhaps now we can take a 5-minute break if you think this is okay. And then we continue with the rest of the session. Claire, what do you think?
Yep, that's fine. If everyone is good with that, we had one question already. If you want to address that one first before we let people go.
Is the last one or?
Yes.
Can this export platform help rural farmers export their products? What kind of needs do the rural farmers or young people who are in early stages of their business need to do? What kind of products do the outside market need? Okay, so a 3-part question. First, it's not an export platform. We're talking about exports in general here, okay? I'm sorry, we don't have an export platform, right? We're talking about exports in general and how you should align your business to the export market requirements and desires in case you want to export, right? So that's one of the things. But we're working with many farmers in our projects. We're working with farmers and we're helping them export, okay? So if you are asking this question from the point of view of a farmer that wants to export, we encourage you at ITC to start looking into that, okay? There are many ways for you to do that. First of all, when you are at the beginning, the most, I would say, easy, the most easy thing to do is to start with an already existing exporting company, okay? To start a partnership and a collaboration with an already existing company. Like that, you'll be able to learn better, better ways on how to do it and increase your capital so that at a certain point, you'll be able to export on your own, right? Why am I saying this? Is because exporting, while it comes with much more revenue, it also implies more expenses than selling on the local market, right? We're not going to go into that because that is a training over about a week that we usually do, okay? But that's just one of the points. What kind of needs do the rural farmers or young people who are in early stages of their business need to do? I'm not sure, Emmanuel, that I understand. You mean what kind of needs you need to satisfy? If that is your question, then it obviously depends on the market that you are going. Why am I saying this? Because the markets will be different, and not only the markets themselves, but the target segment that in that market, okay? To give you an example, because I don't want to be too vague, I cannot answer this question, what needs you need to answer, because I need to know the market that you're in and I need to know the segment, and then we can do an analysis, right? But to give you an example, a company producing flour, right? A company producing flour can either produce that flour and advertise it for baking, okay, for making bread, all these kind of things, right? Baking in general, just giving an example. Or it can advertise it, if they can do that, if their product allows them, as a highly nutritional meal, right? For children and so forth. I can give you here the example of banana flour, right? Which I know I've worked with a producer of banana flour, and the nutrition of banana flour is very appropriate for children's growth, okay, and development. So they were advertising that not only for cooking to normal people, but they had a specific target market. So you see what I mean? It's extremely difficult to answer in general what needs you need to address. It depends on who you want to sell to, okay? And what kind of products do the outside market need? That I think I answered that question with this answer that I just gave. Okay.
Great.
Emmanuel, please drop a message and let me know if I answered your question, and if not, I can respond to you in parallel. Okay.
Perfect. So we have approximately 5 minutes until the next hour. So actually just under. So we'll come back at, let's say, for our time zone, because I know everyone's in a different time zone here. We'll come back in 5 minutes, which will be just after 3 p.m. here. So if everyone can just calculate, just come back around the turn of the hour. Yeah, just get some water, get a snack, go to the bathroom, do whatever you need to do. And we'll start again in 5 minutes. Thanks, everyone. And feel free to just stay on the line.
Yes, please don't close the session and stay on the line, mute and turn off your cameras, okay? Don't exit the session. Okay.
Awesome. See you in 5, everyone.
See you in 5. Bye.
Okay, so I think we'll just get started in 1 more minute. Thanks, everyone. Okay, cool. So I think we can go ahead and jump right back into it. My camera. Just so you know, Valerio, we have some questions from Abraham that just came in. We have 2 questions. One about pilot of for exporting wild edible mushrooms, and another regarding customers in Europe in the chat box.
Export in post-COVID regarding that purchasing behaviors of customers changed to digital marketing. Oh, okay. Okay. Well, there are 2 different questions. First, in terms your shipping, and then in terms of digital marketing. Okay. The one of digital marketing, I will answer now. Okay, a little later in the presentation, and how you should promote your products, right? In terms of the failed transport that you had because of COVID regulations, all countries now adopted new regulations, okay, or added on top of what they had almost all countries around the world, okay? And what you need to do is to find out what are the entry requirements into Netherlands, okay, and make sure that your production line adheres to those safety regulations, because mostly what you will have are food safety requirements that have been added. I'll give you an example. Avocado exporters from Mexico to the US last year, 2 years ago now, to 2020, when the pandemic started, okay, they started to market their products as safe products, and along that they were showing workers wearing masks and explaining all the security measures, the safety measures they were putting into place on their production line, okay? That in turn made consumers at ease with purchasing avocados imported from Mexico, right? So this can be an example for you in terms of adhering to the new rules and regulations, and also to how to market your products, okay? So you'll need to find out, basically my answer is, you need to find out what the new entry requirements, because you say here it failed due to COVID-19, okay? I don't know if it was a failure of consumer purchase or a failure because of not adhering to safety regulations for entering Netherlands. Whichever it is, you need to find out which one, okay? And then change your production line according to what they need. Yeah, it can be very simple. It can be a very, very simple thing, from you having along the production line your workers wearing protective masks, hand sanitizer, making sure they're in germ-free suits and all of that to handle the products, to more complicated ones, okay, that needs different types of washing for your mushrooms and packaging and all of that. So I don't know which one it is, because it depends on what the regulations are in Netherlands. And also from Abraham, I have some customers in Europe wanting mushrooms this coming season. How your organization can help us export our products to European countries. It failed due to transportation problem. Oh, yes. Okay, I see now. I understand. Because due to transportation problem, that was a huge issue in 2020, because a lot of airlines have stopped basically functioning, and therefore you had less modalities to transport, right? I think that's what your issue was. You had less modalities to transport. In the case of mushrooms, I think, I'm not an expert, but from my general knowledge, I think they're highly perishable products. Therefore, you need to transport them fast. I don't think, I don't know if you can transport them via ships, okay? And I think you needed air transportation for that. Now, travel is starting to come back to normal. However, the prices still stay very, very high. I will mention this later in the presentation, okay, in terms of transport. And how ITC can help you export the products to European countries. This is a very good question, and it links to how ITC functions, okay? And ITC operates on a project basis, right? And in each project, which are sponsored by different, are funded by different donors, in each project, we work on some value chains. And there we select companies. And when we do that, okay, that's where we work with a company such as yours to find out what the entry requirements are, to make sure the company gets all the certifications they need to meet the production capabilities that you need for the European market. Yeah. And then, of course, depending on the project, we have various activities like linking them to buyers and so forth. Yeah? But in order for you to benefit from that, we need to have a project in your country that tackles these issues. Okay. That's how ITC help. How best can you source, Murimoga, how best can you source market for your products? I'm not sure I understand what you mean by source the market. Can you please explain what you mean? Write down another explanation, because I'm not sure what you mean by the question. Okay, Murimoga, I will let you write, and I will continue with the presentation. And once you've done, I'll continue. Okay. We're planning on exporting our products. How is Europe can assist you in this situation? The same way I explained to Abraham. Okay. We have different ways to help companies, right? In your case, what we are doing now is this series of trainings and webinars, right? But because you participated in this project with the Ecopreneurs Awards, okay? Other than that, we need to have specific projects in your country that target your value chain. Yeah.
Maybe just to jump in as well,
sure,
Valerio,
sure. Go ahead, Claire.
They can also access the trade and market intelligence tools, which ITC provides free of charge for SMEs. So I'll share the link to those in the chat. And then in addition on helping with export knowledge, you have obviously this webinar, but you also have the entire ITC SME Trade Academy that has a lot of e-learning courses that can help you expand your knowledge of what you need to prepare to export and what are different requirements in different countries. So for Linus, I'll post some of the links to those resources that can help you as well.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Claire. Thanks for that. Okay, so I think we can continue now with the presentation. And Murimoga, I'll still wait for your question, okay? And I'll answer when you have it. Okay. I see another question. Perhaps it's better to continue now, and I'll take note, and I'll start answering towards the end so that we don't keep the presentation on hold, the session on hold for too long, okay? Now, we looked into how COVID-19 impacted the needs, expected outcomes, habits, and occasions, okay? Now, let's turn into how it impacts the positioning that you're trying to do with your product or service, yeah? The first thing that you need to do is to find out how the market requirements are changing. And I think in one of my answers, I just mentioned this, right? Especially for the, I think it was Abraham, right? With the mushroom export. That's one of the things that you need to do, how the market requirements are changing. What are they requiring? And you can do that by asking yourselves these questions that you have here on the screen, okay? I split them down into the four dimensions of the positioning that I mentioned before, right? That's part of the strategy. On the product, right? What are the physical characteristics and attributes that the clients value the least, okay? So think about that. I cannot answer it for you, right? Because all of you here have different type of businesses, and each business needs its own answer individually. But if you answer all of these questions, you'll be in a better position to see how the requirements have changed, yeah? So on quality, right? What are the health and safety regulations? And also on packaging, right? What are the packaging regulations? A lot of countries have changed these regulations from what they previously were before, okay? They changed. For example, in terms of packaging, okay? I'm going to give you an example specific for packaging. And this is also related to Korkor's question, okay? For plastic recycling. At the beginning, in 2020, at the beginning of 2020, the European Union passed us legislation that as of 2023, all plastic material that enters the European Union must contain a minimum of, I think it's 25% recycled plastic, right? So you have, since the moment they passed the law, 2 years to comply with that. This has huge implications on all businesses that want to export to the European Union, okay? From 2024, the degree of recycled plastic needs to increase, and so forth for the next years, yeah? This is a requirement. If Korkor, you are into plastic recycling, okay? Your question, how you can export the plastic without crushing them, I'm sorry, I'm not a plastic expert, and I don't know how to answer that. You need the explanation from a person that's expert in packaging on that, because what you're asking there is relating to your production, and I'm sorry, I'm not an expert on that, so I don't want to give you any answer that okay. There you go. Korkor, you have somebody in the chat that is an expert. Mungaiga, perhaps in private, you can answer to Korkor, okay? So this was one of the examples that I wanted to give you on packaging regarding the European Union. So you see how legislations are changing. That was one type of change that was imposed by plastic, by recycling, okay? You have others that are imposed now by COVID, okay? That came into play because of COVID that were not taken into consideration, okay? Cost. Do you have an idea of the international average cost for your product? If you don't, then maybe you should start looking into that, okay? Are clients willing to pay more for better physical characteristics, quality, and delivery terms? I've already answered in part in terms of COVID-19. We know now that people are going for more convenient and cheaper solutions, okay, when they're staying at home. So here's the answer to one of these questions. Okay, time. What are the lead times required at each node of the value chain? Meaning what I told you before, what you saw before the break. Customers, when we're ordering now on e-commerce, we're expecting 2 to 3 days delivery maximum, right? So you need to take that into consideration. Once you identify the market conditions, okay, you will need to adapt your product or service to it, okay? Once again, these questions that I've put here for you can help you identify how you can change your offer, okay? Now, I'm giving you these in this presentation, okay? And it's related to COVID-19. However, when I'm coaching and training people on export strategy, these are things, are questions that need to be asked periodically, not only now because of COVID-19, okay? You should answer these things for yourself periodically, okay? Check them again to see how and what changed in the consumer's behavior that affects your positioning, right? So I've put them here as questions so that it triggers a thinking process for you to see what you can do with your business, okay? And if you take one by one and start answering them, you would see when you will need to change. And I guarantee you will find at least 1 or 2 questions that will prompt you the decision that you need to change something, okay? Just so you know. Now, let's look at marketing capabilities, okay? Let's see market, because so far we were talking about the production. Remember that the strategy has, the business has 2 functions, production and marketing capabilities, right? We showed so far how COVID-19 can affect the production line. It's also relevant for your marketing capabilities. Yeah, COVID-19 has also impacted the way companies advertise their products and services, okay? And I've organized the following slides into things that have changed, okay, in terms of marketing. So what we had before, right? What we had before, it was marketing begins with knowing your customer, right? This was something that was taught to all of us in marketing books, okay? Now, the marketing begins with knowing your customer segment. The customer segment is much more important for your business, yeah? Utilizing customer segmentations and personas, like you have already done, can bring deeper insights, okay, into media strategies. Now, just for you to have an idea, I want to ask you, you don't need to answer, but think about how many times have you done your persona, right? And when is the last time you have done it? If it was a year ago, I strongly recommend that you go and revisit that, okay? I strongly recommend you go and revisit that in terms of COVID-19. Why? Because maybe a person that used to be social, okay, before the pandemic, and used to go out and used to have a certain habit and was purchasing whatever you positioned yourselves for, now with staying at home, it can be completely different, okay? The persona might be the same, but the way the person is behaving can be completely different. Before, it used to be that you were competing with your competitors, okay, which is still true in to some extent, but now what you're competing with is with the last best experience that your customer had. Okay, obviously, the last best experience your customer had, in many cases, was delivered by one of your competitors, right? But you're now competing against this, the last best experience. Yeah. Customers hope you have what they want. Now, customers are becoming more and more demanding, and they expect you to have exactly what they want, right? It's not something similar. They want you to give them exactly what they want. And the reason why they are behaving like that, consumers, is because of the variety of choices nowadays, okay? There is a huge variety of choices and substitutes for everything that people are buying, right? So unless you deliver exactly what they want, you might be into difficulty. You might find yourselves into difficulties. Again, I'm not going to go through all these details. Like I said, you will receive this presentation. Again, customers must sit at the heart of your marketing strategy, okay? This was the old truth. What has changed is that the customers must sit at the heart of your customer journey, okay? And I'm sure many of you have already designed that for your businesses, okay? The customer journey is very important, yeah? Trust and integrity are fundamental to driving the market momentum these days, okay? Which is linked to the next point. Relationships are everything nowadays. They're not just one of the things that are important. The relationship with your customer is extremely, extremely important, no matter what you are dealing with, a service or a specific product, yeah? Agility used to be a technology process, right? Now it became a modern marketing approach. And I think we have just a couple of more slides with this. Very, very important. And all of you present here today have been a part of the Ecopreneurs Awards, right? You have applied for that, which I think you're already aware of this first point. I mean, I think at least you are already on this path. The brand doesn't need to stay only behind great products. Now it needs to stay behind great values, okay? And linked to this is that marketing is at the center of the growth agenda for the full suite, the full C-suite, okay? The C-suite, for anybody that's not familiar with, it's the customer, there are the 4 C's of marketing: customer, cost. I don't remember the other C, the other 2, but this is what it's talking about here with the full C-suite, okay? Now, let's talk about production capabilities. What happened during the pandemic, right? Many people around the globe have been called to stay at home, okay? And away from others in order to limit the spread of COVID, right? This has a direct impact on you as businesses, okay? Why? Because a major byproduct of this was on manufacturing, okay? Like I said before, goods and commodities in the upstream of the value chain, okay, have suddenly been produced in much lower quantities or not at all, okay? And this is a fact which triggered what? Delivery delays, okay? very big delivery delays, and in some cases, as we saw today, with one of you, complete turnaround of the shipment, right? Increased costs. Why? Because the scarcer something is, the more it will cost, right? It's normal. So this has led to increased costs in upstream production, okay? And of course, uncertainty, right? For example, 25% of electronics manufacturers stated it was too soon to tell when businesses would return to normal. And I think many of us here are aware, for example, of the microchip crisis that happened throughout 2020 and 2021, right? Electronics microchips I'm talking about, where many electronics were not able to be produced at the same rate as they were before. The demand issue. What do I mean by the demand issue? We had decreased demand, okay, in some services and products like airlines, okay, like fuels and so forth, but we have increased demand in other products. We're coming back to the shift of the demand and supply that I talked about in the beginning, right? We have increased for medical equipment, for supplies, for ventilators. And let me give you an example of how one of the companies that I worked with has adapted to this. Of course, the company, it's an extreme example because the company was positioned. It was a company producing pharmaceutical equipment, okay? So obviously it's not something that will apply to everybody, but to give you an example, this company was producing electronic pharmaceutical equipment, okay? So it was about electronic pharmaceutical equipment. And in 2020, and they were supplying only local market at that time. It doesn't matter which country, it doesn't matter which market. They were, up until then, they never exported before, nothing. And they were operating only on the local market. At the middle of 2020, when companies announced that they will start to work on a vaccine, this company completely shifted their production line to syringes and syringe needles in order to preempt the coming of the vaccine. Because they did that, the company increased their sales by almost 2,000% and have now exported to more than 25 countries. From zero, in 1 year, they went to 25 countries export, okay? This was, I'm giving you this example to see how companies react to what is happening in the macroeconomic sense, okay? That's what I want you to take from today's session. All of this information, maybe it seems like it's too broad and it's too macro, but these things have a cascading effect to you, to your business, and how the people behave when they're purchasing your service or your product, okay? That's why I want to give you this example. That's why all of these things are extremely important for you, especially you as new businesses, right? That you're trying to make it now. So the more connected you are to these realities and the more agile, right, you are in terms of changing and adapting, the better chances you have to succeed, yeah? And in terms of transaction capabilities, right? You need to adapt your business to the changing environment. That's what I've been saying until now, okay? And you can assess your capabilities against the market requirements with these questions, okay? With these questions. When I'm talking about transaction capabilities, okay? So we've talked about production, talked about, and now we're talking about marketing. and transaction is a part of marketing, right? Just so that we don't confuse the elements here. And answering again these questions will help you with that, okay? It's both for market requirements, the questions, and then for capabilities. Think about in terms the way you're doing sales, right? Your business model right now. What are the sales used in the sector at the moment, right? I'm talking at the moment. What are the legislations regulating advertisements, okay? Any legislation about promotions in your country now? And then you can ask yourself about your capabilities, right? Do you have the capability to build your brand image? Do you have a budget for handling alternative transaction methods, okay? And selling methods, what you have here, trade fairs, exhibitions, buying, buyers, these are selling instruments, right? So do you have a budget to do that? And so forth. Same for distribution. I won't go into all of them because these are for you. Again, I'm putting them as questions because each one of your businesses is unique and it needs its own answers to these elements, yeah? And to bring back to the importance of these questions and what's happening, the company we were working with in pharmaceuticals, right, that increased their exports, okay, they went through this exercise. They stated they asked themselves these questions, okay, just to give you an incentive about it. Because it might sound like some questions on a paper, but if you start thinking about them, you'll see the relevance and their importance, okay? In terms of prompting sales inquiries, right? Prompting questions from buyers, right? What you have here is a list of all of them, right? The traditional ones, trade fairs, buyer-seller meetings, web pages, personal sale visits, okay, trade missions, press releases, and so forth, okay? And what you have here with the COVID image, right? With the virus icon, these are the ones that have been affected by COVID directly. And I think we're gonna go into them a little bit, but trade fairs and exhibitions, for those of you who have been participating in those, or at least, let's put it differently, pitching events, okay? Because many of you have participated for sure in pitching events. They used to be face-to-face, okay? And it's a different level of connection when you are face-to-face and trust that you build face-to-face than online as it is now, right? Same with buyer-seller meetings, okay? People used to want to meet with you so you can tell them about your product or service. Now, everything is online, very different, okay? And so forth. Now, in terms of virtual connection, industry leaders estimate that the virtual meetings are here to stay. Even once the full COVID recovery happens, okay, there we are talking about a hybrid from now on, face-to-face with virtual. Why? Because of the costs, okay? Everybody realized nowadays that virtual delivery of everything brings a huge amount of savings with it, right? And companies like that, especially if you are in a B2B context, okay? Your business is in a B2B business model, even more so, okay? Now, many supply chains have been disrupted during the pandemic. This can be seen in shipping, like we said before, where container prices is skyrocketing, okay? The quarantines, what happened when quarantines started, there were fewer people in the ports, okay, where the containers were operated, right? Orders have been canceled during the pandemic, okay, which created a huge chaos in major supply chain hubs, okay, major shipping hubs, right? But even with this, just-in-time deliveries are now a thing of the past, like we said, right? Even with this reality, what's happening, people still expect their products to be delivered within 2 to 3 days, okay? Restructuring of global supply chain, okay? Now, this is very important. This is very, I don't know what everybody's business is, but in the case you are working in one of these supply chains, okay, or you were before, there has been a restructuring has started to happen because of COVID. What does that mean? Businesses that were offshoring certain productions, okay, or services, okay, now, in order to become more resilient to shocks like COVID was, okay, they're starting to bring everything closer back to home, okay, than it used to. Because what happened during COVID, because of the shipping issues, right? Because of the shipping issues, they're starting to restructure their supply chain, okay? And also to reduce costs, because even if the shipping issue will be solved at one point and all the trade routes will start going back to normal, okay, the prices will not. Once the price in shipping has reached a level, it usually stays there, okay? So because of this, supply chains are restructuring into bringing everything closer to home, yeah? Very important for you to know and understand in terms of your strategy, especially in the example here that we had with mushrooms, okay? Think about now that you will have more competition in terms of exporting mushrooms to Netherlands from regional producers, yeah? Where before European producers were much more expensive than you, right? Now, producers are starting to think about that. So you need to adapt your strategy to that, okay? What can you do? You need to think yourself, what can you do in order to compete with those hubs, right? So this is an example, and this restructuring of the supply chains is extremely important for everybody, okay? Now, resources, okay? First, let's talk about human resources, okay? No one could have predicted a crisis with the magnitude of COVID-19, okay? This could not have been predicted. And this crisis accelerated the traditional methods of human resources management, okay? It created significant challenges for managers and for human resources practitioners in general, okay? For those companies that were not able to adapt, like be able to be equipped with the necessary technology to allow people to work from homes and so forth, for many of those meant the end of their business, yeah? So think about in terms from now on, when it comes to human resources, think about it in terms of a hybrid working at home, between working at home and working at the office, okay? I have many friends who have their own businesses or even that are working for other businesses who they have renounced the office space. Companies realize now that people can work from home just as productive, okay? And when I say hybrid working space, I mean a lot of companies these days now just keep an office where to have meetings, but in terms of working space, they are shifting to home, to work from home, okay? Financial and physical assets. Now, if your business, depending on where you are, okay, if your business is facing a downturn that has a very big effect on liquidity, okay, you need a turnaround and a rethinking of your strategy so that you avoid insolvency. Yeah. Now, all of this can be triggered by a management decision, for example, to restructure measures, okay, to impose restructuring measures as soon as losses erode, start to happen, okay? So take that into account, and furthermore, for financial and physical assets, here are some working capital solutions, okay, for those of you that have urgent cash needs, okay? Here are some reasons why you might have working capital issues, okay? Closing demand and supply. Suppliers are unable to deliver critical components for your products, yeah? A downturn in consumer demand, right? Which leads to increased levels of inventory. Collecting receivables, difficulties in paying suppliers because your receivables have not come in yet, okay? And challenges to deliver products to customers, okay? Which we already had an example in today's session, right? And then cash flow forecasting, okay? Take a look at all these. I'm not gonna go into detail on them, okay? And what I wanted to reach is some tips for you. What we have here in the next slides are some tips for you to release pressure from working capital, okay? First, what you can do with your receivables, okay? Raise the invoices faster, okay? Reach an agreement with your buyers for raising the invoice faster, okay? Shorter payment terms, okay? Which is in return for discounted payments, right? The faster they make the payment, they get discounts. This is a practice that's been used by everybody. And keep in mind, this is not in general for sales, okay? This is for you to release the stress on your liquidity, okay? What we're talking about here, because this was a general concern now, this is a general concern for many, many companies in COVID era, right? You have issues with your liquidity. So what I'm showing you here is tips for you, what you can do to help with your liquidity issue, okay? Make credit controls, okay, on your buyers. Consider financing solutions such as debt factoring or asset-based lending. What else? In terms of inventory, okay, utilize freed up capacity to increase production frequency and minimize the batch sizes, right? Put in your plan factory shutdowns and delays, okay? Plan for days so that you don't have issues with your production, and so forth, okay? In terms of the inventory, you can all, and I think many of you present here today are faced with some of these issues, and all these tips could help you. In case you haven't thought about them before, take a look and see what can be possible within your company. Yeah. Payables, right? Again, for your liquidity. Eliminate early payments, okay, when you don't need to, right? Because you in turn as businesses, you will have your own payables to consider. So think about that and see what you can eliminate in terms of releasing money earlier than normal that you would do, okay? And so forth. Again, some of the tips, some tips for you to work on that. just one second, because there was one point that I wanted to make. Right. In terms of, I think it was here, in terms of your receivables, okay? There are many other tools that you can use, okay? Such as credit discounting, okay? Especially when you work into, when you are exporting, okay? And you work with a bank, you have the option to sell your invoices, okay, your receivables, to a credit owner, right, for discounted price, meaning that you get only a portion of the money and it will become the creditor's responsibility to get all the money from your customers. Yeah. So that's also why I forgot to mention it here at the receivables. That's also one of the instruments that you can use, and that's not very often thought about, but it is worth thinking about it when you are having liquidity issues. Yeah. Now, information and know-how, okay, because we're talking about resources. What I want to highlight in this slide here is that the role of knowledge management, okay, the role of knowledge management as a strategic knowledge resource during COVID-19 cannot be underscored, right? The management of information and knowledge is even more crucial than before, okay, in guiding you with the decisions that you need to make as business managers. Yeah. During COVID-19 period, it has been and it is continuing to be imperative for critical knowledge to be acquired and spread out fast. Yeah. Knowledge is the most valuable resource that you can possess at this time. Okay. Think about it from that perspective. Knowledge is the most important thing that you can possess at this time for your business. Okay. Talking about social media, right? Now, findings in many studies have showed that consumers are increasingly utilizing social media for influence as they shop and evaluate product alternatives. Okay. I don't know how each of you can use social media because it's very dependent on the product or service that you have. But keep in mind that now with COVID-19, people spend less time in stores. Okay. So this is a fact. We spend less time in stores. Okay. So the influence of in-store promotional materials, okay, has declined drastically, okay? And consumers of social media is on the rise. Why? Because it's easier when we all stay at home to go through Facebook or to go through Instagram or to go on Twitter or to go on any other platform that you use, right? So consumers are now using social media to identify basically product needs, okay? They're using social media as their guide on consuming, on buying, on purchasing, yeah? So keep this in mind, very important. And this has been a shift in promotional activities that's been on the rise. And not only from the COVID, since the COVID started, but since many years ago now, but even more so during the pandemic. What are the marketing implications of using social media? Because that's the point that's why I made that point, okay, with people spending more time on social media, because it has marketing implications for you, right? So first, people are looking for product alternatives, okay? Through social media, they're identifying them, okay? They're identifying product needs, okay? They're using social media to compare product alternatives, to evaluate the risks, to make purchases and so forth, okay? There are many, many influencers in on all products and services these days, okay? And people tend to listen to their opinion about how they are, about the quality and so forth, yeah? So put into your plan, into your marketing plan, social media, because it is here to stay, social media, okay? Regarding the question earlier that we had on the mushrooms, how you can use social media, with that, it depends to whom you're selling to, because if in the Netherlands you are selling to an intermediary company, okay, then your brand is not that visible. Therefore, it might not be worth you engaging in social media activities on agricultural products if you're selling in bulk and not with your own brand, okay? This is a fruit, something for you to think about. And I think we're coming to a close with the last few slides, okay? On lessons learned, right? I'll go very quickly. I'm not going to go into details on this. There are new trade opportunities, okay? There are new trade opportunities in the market and room for new business models. That should be the most important thing for you to take from this pandemic. Even if you're struggling now, then think about reshifting and rethinking your business, okay? And you have first markets. Now you have the biggest growing markets have been eastwards now, right? In Asia. You have the sectors, okay? Technology, pharmaceuticals, okay? Many things that I won't go into, but you have a lot of sectors that are on the rise while others are on the downfall, okay? Sustainability, and this directly affects all of you present here today. You participated in ITC's event, right? And which is linked to this, okay? Now, people have a bigger appetite for green products and processes all over the world, yeah? And people are now looking for sustainable options, okay? People prefer to buy something that they think is sustainable and is not damaging the environment and so forth than anything else, yeah? Especially the new generation. You are part of the Ecopreneur Award, okay? That theme was for a specific reason. And this issue, the sustainability issue, has been accelerated even more by the COVID pandemic, yeah? So if you are in this business of sustainability, green production, you know, all of these things, then you are on the right path with your business, yeah? Supply chains, again, we've been over it, right? And how disruption of supply chains have affected all businesses around the globe. So take into consideration your supply chain, okay? And what you are doing with your business, right? And accelerating trends and permanent changes, like adopting technology, yeah? You have, for example, many countries that their e-commerce penetration before the pandemic was under 30%, okay? And now it's above 70%, with most of that increase coming from new users of e-commerce, okay? I am one of those people. I used to like going into shops okay, before February 2020, when the lockdowns started, I used to like going into shops. Yeah. I think before that, I barely ordered anything online. And if it was something that I couldn't carry by myself, you know, from the shop. But after this, I barely imagine going into back into a shop now. Okay. So very important for you as new businesses to take into account. With this, I think we have reached an end. Okay. And what I will do now, I think I will give the floor back to Claire and the team. And I will check to see if there are any questions so far.
I didn't see any more coming in, but if they have questions as a follow-up, also they can share them with the Youth Ecopreneur Awards at intrasend.org email address, and then we can also pass them on to you as well. So if you're uncomfortable asking the question here in the chat, you can still get in touch with us to ask your questions later. Yeah, oh, maybe one coming in. Oh, never mind. That's Sharika. Yeah, I'm not seeing any more, and I didn't see any follow-up from Morimoga on his question. So
I do see from Morimoga, I haven't answered the question. I do perishable farm produces, and I have been selling them locally. Now I want to expand and export them. My question is, how best can I find a market outside of Zimbabwe? Morimoga, the best thing I can tell you at the moment, and this is the start of any exercise that I do with the companies that I work with, is first go on, first of all, find the exact HS code of your product, okay? I'm sure that your product has an HS code. So find the HS code of your product, then go on Trademap, right? It's one of the links that Claire linked earlier. And then you can see at a macroeconomic level, imports into all countries on the globe that are importing your product, right? And start from there. Start from where the requirement, the request is the biggest, the countries that have the biggest request, right? Then look into competition, meaning on the same trade map, you can see who is exporting to those countries, okay? If there are a lot of competitors, that is a good sign. It means that the market is volatile and you have room to enter a new market. If you see only one or two competitors, only one or two people, countries selling to that, that means the market, I'm giving you some, some practical tips here. That means the market is a monopoly. And it will be extremely difficult, even if it's the biggest market in terms of imports. If there are only one or two sellers to that market, that means it's a monopoly and it's extremely difficult for you to enter, right? So start thinking about these steps. Which countries import the most? Then how does the competition look like? Once you have a selection of a few countries that you like, based on these general elements, then you can start looking into their requirements in more details, right? You can go, you have on WTO's website, you have many resources to see the requirements for your products, and also on Trademap, okay? Usually on Trademap and in other links that Claire linked here, you will find country requirements, right? And see if you can comply with those. And based on that, you can choose your own, you can choose a market. I hope I've given you at least an idea on how to start the process of identifying a market. It won't be easy, okay? It will not be easy. It takes time and it takes engagement from your side. But let me put it like this. You're the only one that can do it. You don't want a stranger doing it for you, this, okay? We can tell you how and what to do, but it should be up to you to do it, because anybody that you will try to engage is a stranger for your company, and you are the one that knows the best.
And we have a hand raised from Ronald. So Ronald, if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask your question, please go for it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I don't know how best I can pronounce the name Varelui.
It's all, just call me Vali. Nice to meet
Yeah,
you,
thank you
Roland.
so much. I love the presentation you made, and it really captures how much COVID-19 has affected us as companies and founders of, I can say, startups, basically in developing countries like Uganda in Africa. I would love to know. I may say I don't have so many questions, but I would want to thank you for what you said and highlight a few things you talked about. One is about the persona. The persona is really very important in a business, in a scenario like COVID-19 when it just came around. I can say for a company, I'm a CEO and the founder of Ecopreneur, a company in Uganda that does waste management. But since COVID-19 came in around March 18th in Uganda, we have really talked about the personas as a company over around 10 times. So you can see with COVID-19 coming around, different personas are really changing. Different markets we have as a company are really changing, and this is very, very important. Trust and integrity is also very important. I can say as a company, one of our biggest customers was schools, because we, as a company, we produce briquettes, fuel, cooking, like briquettes for fuel used by schools for cooking. And so when COVID-19 came around, schools closed and we had no more market. But now I can say recently schools have been opened around, but they don't have enough money to pay us as a company. And they say we need an order of 1,000 kilograms. That's it, 1 ton of briquettes, but they don't have money to pay us. But through the integrity and the trust we have in them as schools, we say we are going to give you 2 tons of briquettes, use them for 1 or 2 months. But since we know how much we are working with you, you can pay us with time. So what you mentioned about, I can say the presentation was really very good. I loved everything we talked about, and that's what captured my attention. I really love having the presentation and then reading more about it. And yeah, it's really very helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ronald, for the intervention. I'm very happy to hear the presentation spoke to you, and thank you because with what you just said with your company, you exemplified what I meant on those issues, on the personas and on the trust and integrity. I mean, you are one of the companies that did it, right? That understood the need to change the persona. But I don't know. I'm hoping also that you'll be able to diversify your client portfolio more, right? To think about alternatives. If schools were closed down, maybe other people need to use that. I don't know. I'm just giving you some ideas, but very happy to hear your comment, and thank you for exemplifying what I've been saying. Yeah.
Great. And we had
I'm sorry, just to mention, I've been in Uganda, hoping to start a new project just recently in October. And I haven't been to Uganda in a very long time. And I enjoyed going back again very, very much.
Yeah, and on that front, you had a follow-up question as well from Abraham, just on the way that the projects work with ITC. You know, like how do we choose which countries these projects are happening in? Abraham happens to be located in Tanzania, so maybe you could just elaborate a little bit more on that, because I understand it could be confusing to someone from, you know, outside the UN sphere.
Yes, of course, Claire. Okay, so Abraham, the way the United Nations work, right? We are funded by government countries, okay, and by other donors to do projects on specific things, okay? And when donors come to us and ask for a new project, they usually tell us, we don't have much of a choice, especially ITC doesn't have much of a choice in us choosing the country. Usually we have, for example, let's say the European Union, okay? And the European Union comes to us and tells us, listen, we need you to do a project in Tanzania to help beekeepers improve their production so that they can export honey to Europe. You see what I mean? This is how projects are being done. And it's not us selecting. I gave you this example because we will have this year a project exactly like I just told you. I didn't make up this example. The European Union asked us to do a project in Tanzania on beekeeping, and we are doing that project. Yeah, but that's how value chains are selected, and that's how projects are being done. Once we reach to that, let's say that we reach, Abraham, into your area, okay, into your product line, into your value chain, okay. Once we have a project, let's say somebody comes and says, I want a project in Tanzania, and one of the sectors is mushrooms that I want you to work on, okay? If that happens, what we usually do, the way we select companies that work with us, is first we make advertisements about the project in newspapers and media channels in Tanzania. And most importantly, what we do, we work with the sector associations of those sectors, okay? So I don't know, you're probably, maybe you are affiliated to Tanzania Horticulture Association, okay? I don't know, maybe you're affiliated with Tantrade, or because I've worked recently in Tanzania on, I've worked on spices, on coffee, and there were a few more products, not mushrooms, okay, unfortunately, but we did work on some, okay, there you go. If you are dealing with different agricultural products, then all the more you are affiliated to quite a few sector associations. But this is how we usually reach working with companies. I hope that this responded to your question.
Great. And we're 10 minutes over time. So I think we can close it up here. As I mentioned, if you guys have follow-up questions, you can always send them to the Youth Ecopreneur Awards email address, and then we can connect them with Valerio so he can continue to answer your questions. Yeah, we at ITC, our job is to support you guys. So looking forward to continuing to engage you guys through the virtual learning series. I've just posted as well the link to the Yay community, which is ITC's online platform specifically for youth entrepreneurs. Please feel free to sign up. It's completely free of charge. Anyone on the platform has access to direct messaging other young entrepreneurs from around the world, as well as mentors, and tapping into a variety of other events, opportunities, and a selection of e-learning courses targeting youth entrepreneurs for ITC. So please go ahead and sign up. And we look forward to welcome you guys to our next session, which we will use the same link for. So you can use the same link you used to join today. That session will be on the 10th of February. You can see it on the screen from the same time. It's 2 to 4 p.m. here in Europe. Please check your local time to know what it is for you. And this will be a special session as well, led by an expert from ITC on embedding environmental sustainability in business operations, and we'll be relying on the Cambridge value mapping tools. So don't miss it. You can see the link as well on the screen. And thanks to everyone for staying with us for this session and for going 10 minutes over time. And we look forward to seeing you on the 10th of February. Have a great rest of your evening, afternoon, or morning. Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye, everyone.